And we're going. All right, awesome. Thank you so much. I am Dylan Busby. This is Dress Casual. Thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. I'm here with Cassandra Loftlin of Healthy Communities Augusta. Cassandra, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely no problem. So like I was just saying, I got very interested in the local environment here in Augusta because we had that big hurricane, and then all of a sudden I would check my phone every morning and I would get those terrible air quality notifications. And then, you start to think like people are saying in the comments of certain posts, like, oh, it's just because of, we're losing canopy cover and everything is going to be fine here soon enough. And then I start to read more and more articles and the things that you guys are talking about on Healthy Communities Augusta with the Savannah River Keepers. And it seems like there may be a more of a deep rooted problem with industry around here rather than just, a loss of canopy cover. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. And if you could just give us a quick introduction, you said you were born here and then you spent some time away, you came back. So just go ahead, give us your background, let us know, what you were passionate about, your favorite foods, if you don't mind, your favorite color, whatever you want to talk about, and then just how you got introduced to Healthy Communities Augusta.
Yep. So my name is Cassandra Loftlin. I was born here in Augusta, grew up here, spent, you know, part of my adulthood here. I left, went to school, worked, traveled a bit, and came back in 2020.
Okay.
Um, so I really have a passion for Augusta. I know it well. I grew up in East and West Augusta, so I kind of have my foot in both worlds. I went to West Side High School, go Patriots, and my favorite color is purple. My favorite food is tacos, and I am a chef by training. That's what the last thing I went to school for, and
Okay.
worked as a chef for several years in Atlanta. Um, and got into. I've always been passionate about food and eating well, and got into food and food justice when I was here during the pandemic. I was developing recipes for grocery store chains and also cookbooks. And these are everyday ingredients. These were not elaborate chef type meals, right? So these ingredients you should be able to find anywhere in a local grocery store. It started off very personal. I got very frustrated that I could not find the ingredients I needed in my neighborhood, that I had to either drive 20 minutes to Washington Road or go across the state line into South Carolina to get groceries,
Yeah.
because the corner store does not have, things like frozen corn and certain types of vegetables and spices. And then I couldn't find sparkling water in my neighborhood. So again, it started out very personal. Then I realized, what are my neighbors doing? And most of them do drive to Walmart in South Carolina. That's after we did a poll, we found that out, because it's a place where they can do not only shop for food, but do banking and get their prescription. So it's a one stop shop. Um, but I thought about, what about my neighbors that don't have a car? So I started asking people, what do they do for groceries? How do they get them? I started calculating and timing the bus routes and what people were doing to get where they needed to go. Um, Even though I live in this neighborhood and I have a car, there's a great saying that came out of the pandemic, and it says, a lot of people like to say, well, we're all in the same boat. That's not true. We're all in the same ocean, but some of us have a speedboat, some of us are on a raft, some of us are in a canoe. So I really wanted to make food more available for my community. And I started organizing people to start a food cooperative. And in that, I was asked to do a little talk at Healthy Communities Augusta at the Savannah River Keeper, and working with the River Keeper just in that one talk, and talking to her about some of her initiatives, and some of the plans she had for uh, Savannah River Keeper. I realized that food is just a small cornerstone of the problem. Like, we
Hmm.
have much bigger issues that impact community health other than food. I
Right.
can feed you all the nutritious vegetables and leafy greens I want, but if you live in an area that has poor air quality, poor water, lead in the soil, it's not going to do you much good. It might make you feel a little bit better, but it's not going to save you. And that's how I got involved in environmental issues.
Okay. And just on that point, I mean, I wanted to bring up this article real quick. Just got some stats on Richmond County here in Augusta. So this is from scienceforgeorgia.org. Environmental justice problems and solutions in Augusta. So 80% of Richmond County census tracts have stroke rates higher than the national average. Richmond County is the third worst as far as the Sci4. I need to look more into that. The Sci4 GA burden score. And also, we have a 1 to 4 year decreased life expectancy in Richmond County compared to the rest of Georgia. So, just to see those stats alone was pretty surprising to me. Is that something you're already familiar with?
Yes, and what is not mentioned in that article, the American Lung Association has named us the worst air quality in Georgia. So we have poorer air quality than a city of 6 million people in Atlanta with, quadruple the amount of cars. So that gives you pause to think what's going on. When you talk about the decreased life expectancy, yes, that is true for Richmond County, but if you break it down by zip code 30901 and 30906 have a lower life expectancy than other areas of Augusta or the Richmond County CSRA area.
Okay.
And
Well,
that's,
I'm
yeah,
in 30906, so that's good to know.
yeah, yeah.
And this article here, it's kind of interesting because it says that it's from the American Lung Association, like you said, just from 2024. Augusta's air quality a mixed bag, among the cleanest cities in the nation for ozone, but worse than Southeast for particle pollution. What I found interesting too, when I was looking at when I would wake up in the morning, like I said, and I would see those health reports, one of the most prevalent particles in the area was carbon monoxide. Seemed like it was like mostly carbon monoxide, and then kind of like a mixed bag of other things. I didn't. Do you have kind of an idea of where that specifically is coming from? Is that just like a one particular area, or is that like a joint effort of all the industry in the area?
So Augusta is home to more than a dozen industrial facilities, including chemical plants and battery plants, and their emissions directly affect our air, water, and soil. So that's where they're coming from. You mentioned earlier Solvay or Science Co.
Yeah.
Um, they recently had asked for a expanded air permit um, for the city, and that was one of the things we asked for a public hearing on because we already have enough pollution in the city.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring up. I know I had that here. I had this one up specifically from. Here we go. This is one that had been shared by Augusta Healthy Communities recently. Our Rep Carter moves to weaken air pollution standard, which I thought was kind of surprising.
Mhm.
What was that one all about?
So that was the hearing we had with the EPD over the Christmas break. They had applied for an expanded air permit to emit more chemicals or release more chemicals, saying that it was a low emission, and they are not a low emitter; they are a high emitter. Um, and so we asked for a hearing to explain to the EPD what we're dealing with here. We're the 48th worst in the nation for short-term particle pollution and 24th worst for annual pollution. And we have a number of unhealthy air days. You can go on your weather app and check the air quality. Now, there are certain times if the emissions are extremely high, they will remove it and say it's an exception. But for Richmond County, if 1 out of 3 days is an exception, that's not an exception. That is we have a poor quality of air.
Right.
And it comes from, like I said, Solvay, PCS, nitrogen fertilizer, graphic packaging international. um, Collectively they emit 1.3 million pounds of hazardous air pollution annually into 30901 and 30906. Notably, the thing that is newer for us is Solvay discharges 65,000 pounds of chlorobenzene each year. And that is a chemical that the EPA has deemed a potential hazard to human health.
Ah.
Um, So Solvay was expanding their operations, bringing a line down from New Jersey to make EV batteries. And the problem with EV batteries is the wrapping that goes around them emits PFAS, which is the forever chemical. You hear a lot of talk about it.
Yep.
Most people encounter it as the coating on a Teflon pan. That's why they say when it gets scratched up or you notice marks in it, throw it away because that gets into your body. Um, this would be released into the soil and water. And again, we already have enough pollution and bear a lot of that environmental hazards. So that was one of the things we wanted to make known to the EPD. They have not made a decision on the air permit yet, so we are still waiting.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So now, I mean, are you in? So you have to be in constant contact with these type of companies, right? Like when you go to town meetings, when you have different initiatives like that, do you have to reach out to these companies and their spokespeople directly?
No, they don't normally talk to us. So we get the public hearing notifications or the notifications that someone has applied for a permit, and then we start looking into it and doing research on the company.
Okay, okay. And how has Solvay been in particular? I mean, have you spoken to anyone over there directly?
No, we have not had that opportunity yet. We have extended that offer, but we have not had a response yet.
Okay. Right here it says the science. It's Science Co.
Yeah, so it's Solvay now Science Co. So you'll hear both of those names in the news.
Has the potential to emit approximately 50 tons of hazardous air pollutants per year, including more than 25 tons of toxic chlorobenzene, like you said, if allowed to expand operations, according to a news release issued by Savannah Riverkeeper. Wow. Solvay was recently required to pay almost 400 million in environmental penalties at the New Jersey facility. So there you go.
So
Yeah.
what happened is once they found out what they were emitting, the PFAS, et cetera, the damage to the water, um, the city of New Jersey sued them. They were required to pay out that settlement, and they are trying to relocate that line here because EV and green technology is new, and not all states have regulations for that. Georgia is one of those states. We don't have anything on the books that regulates what can be emitted or even the hazards from EV because it is so new. So because they have a plant already here, it is ideal for them to just relocate that operation to Augusta because they have an existing plant.
Gotcha. 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 I noticed that there seems to be someone who's local here speaking for. Have you spoken to Adrian Tillman?
I emailed him a few times and have not gotten a response. And in fairness, he was the person that did the presentation at the hearing. He may not necessarily be the spokesperson, but that was my first line to reach out to say, hey, can we have a conversation? We would love to have you come to a healthy communities meeting so you can explain to residents what you're doing and how we can work together.
Okay. Okay. And I've noticed this woman's name come up quite a bit. I'm sorry, I've reached out to her. We didn't get a chance to communicate directly. How do you pronounce her name?
Uh, Adrian Tillman, or are you talking
No,
about
sorry. Tanya
Tanya Bonitatabas?
Bonitatabas. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
she is my direct supervisor, and Healthy Communities is underneath the Savannah River Keeper, and it was formed when they were a few years back. They were trying to locate a biodigester next to the historic Spirit Creek Baptist Church off of Airline Dixon Road. That population is a predominantly African American Black population, and it would directly impact their health. So they, a bunch of organizations banded together to push back, and they canceled the plans for the biodigester. So that's how it had started. So basically, we're not one in the same. Tanya is actually the river keeper of the Savannah River, but I work for and with Healthy Communities.
Okay. Well, that seems like a win, right? Seems like
Yeah,
you guys
yeah.
can share right there. That's awesome. That's great. So yeah, when you mentioned, I just want to do a real quick. We have a live update on what our air quality is right now. So I just wanted to share
Okay.
that with the people. Let me see here. Augusta Air Quality Index. So we're at a good 34 right now. So that's nice to know
Yeah.
on a beautiful day like today.
Yeah. And it tends to spike during warmer weather. You'll see that.
Okay. Gotcha. Something else I wanted to bring up. Well, actually, you know what? Let's just go over to the Facebook page because you had an event the other day I did want to speak about.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
yeah, you guys were out and about speaking. We're hitting the streets. Come say hi. You were trying to get in touch with local residents.
Yes. So one of the things that Healthy Communities does is we do outreach and we educate the public on the environmental concerns. So we went throughout East Augusta to invite residents to a community meeting that we are having on April 14th.
Okay.
We are in a low internet access area, so not everyone is tech savvy, has the technology, or they may not know how to use it. We have a
Right.
lot of older residents in this neighborhood. So the best way to reach folks is to go door to door. So we were making them aware of the community meeting we're having, where we will have our District 1 representative, who is Jordan Johnson, and our school board representative, who is Shonda Kettle Stovall. Not only is she our school board rep, she's also president of the school board. So residents will have a chance to ask them questions. They can present what they're working on. I'll share a little bit about what's going on with Solvay and the air permit. And then we'll go from there because residents have a lot of concerns um, and need to be educated on the health hazards in our area.
Absolutely. Now, what kind of? I hate to make, I don't want to make too light of a thing, but what type of refreshments are we talking? I see you're down there
We're
for
gonna have
refreshments.
spaghetti and garlic bread and cookies. Yeah,
Awesome. Okay,
we're
great,
gonna
great,
do it
great.
old school. Yep,
Now, do you have? I don't want to get too personal. Do you have children of your own?
I do not.
Okay. So this is just kind of once you realize the type of things that were available to other people in the area, you wanted to make sure. Because I know for me personally, I know it seems very selfish, but I've only started to become really aware and caring about these things since I've had two kids of my own. Before that, like
Right.
you could have told me I was going to die in a, a coal fire tomorrow, and I really wouldn't have cared. But now that I have children to pass it on to and carry on, I think just different things affect people in different ways. So that's the only reason I asked if that was a particular factor in your life.
No, so when I came back in 2020, it was because of the pandemic. I thought I was going to be here for 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into 2 years, and 2 years ended up with me staying. But one of the reasons I stayed was to take care of my grandmother, who at the
Okay.
time was 90.
Yeah.
And she had suffered with breast cancer, stage 4, completely recovered. But my concern was for her, like her and her health. Um,
Absolutely.
and had she not had cancer, I truly believe she would have lived to be 100. But cancer treatments and radiation and all that really take a toll on your body. But my concern was her and why, when I started thinking about the rates of cancer and prostate cancer, just nothing scientific, but just the people in this neighborhood that I knew that had breast cancer or had suffered from prostate cancer, kind of a light bulb went off. Like, why is that?
Yeah.
We don't have a direct tie or line that this emission from this company is causing this cancer, but we do see some parallels. We do see, we don't see as higher rates of cancer in other areas that don't have these manufacturing
Right.
incidents. And there is a high rate of breast cancer in South Augusta as well, unfortunately.
So now this is a full time job. Like when you're 9 to 5, this is a full time job for you at Healthy Communities Augusta.
Yes.
Okay. So now, like you walk in, you're saying hi to everyone. How many people are in the office?
Oh my gosh, like 13, 14.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're spread out a little bit, but we have three offices: Upper Basin, Middle Basin, which is us, and then Lower Basin, which is Savannah. But we house a number of programs: Veterans for Clean Water, Adopt a Stream, of course, Healthy Communities, and we do a lot of outreach with the public. So, Healthy Communities runs once a month, where we bring our nonprofit folks in, the other organizations, as well as interested community members. We meet once a month, we talk. But when I'm not doing that, I do a lot of advocating. So sometimes we'll go up for a lobby day and lobby or try to talk to legislators about certain bills. I do a lot of community outreach. Yesterday, I was with the Girl Scouts in Jennings Place, teaching them about water and how water is tied to their health. and how we need healthy water and what the river keeper does. So we spend a lot of time out in the community as well.
I couldn't help but notice one of the posts that we actually brought up earlier. You mentioned RFK Jr., our new Health and Human Services Secretary. Ha-
Yes.
Did that whole drive, like this recent drive of people actually bringing environmental issues to, because he used to be, he made his money really his name as an environmental lawyer. So was that something that you kind of noticed and really were like, oh wow, this could be a great thing? Or what were your feelings on that when he was kind of running and talking about those issues?
We were and still are very hopeful. One of the things that people don't know is that RFK Jr. used to be a water keeper. So aligns with some of the same values of making sure there's healthy water for the marine and plant life,
Yeah,
but also clean water for people to drink. So that has been very helpful and given us a lot of hope. And then also his focus on making America healthy again. One of the things that recently came up is that he is looking at the possible chemical causes of autism,
yeah,
um, because there is a spike in it over the last 20 or 30 years.
yeah.
So, no matter how we get to it, when people start looking at chemical emissions, it's a win for all of us.
Supposed to be done by my birthday in September, from what I hear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that'll be nice. And that's a really interesting topic too. I think when he's not, I think when you're there's a way, like, because so many people have taken the vaccine path because it's been and I don't even want to go down a certain road here, but I think that when you try to give people information about something that they already have invested in and maybe that they made a mistake, it kind of puts up a barrier. And even if it's not like, you know what, I think there's just a certain conversation where I've already made this choice for my child. I was told at the time it was a good choice. And now I really don't want to hear, if you're going to tell me that there was these side effects, because now I don't want to feel like that I made a bad choice for my child. And I feel like that's a barrier that comes up in a lot of people's lives that hopefully can be eroded, because I don't think anyone's trying to tell you that you made a mistake. I think they're trying to provide information that maybe otherwise wasn't available at the time. You know what I mean? So hopefully that can become something that we're more comfortable talking about, as supposedly that's supposed to be done by September. So we better get real comfortable talking about it real quick. You know what I mean?
Right. And there was a shift. Um, I would say the 80s and 90s. I guess, and it probably started in the 70s, where people, at one point we did everything the government said. Get a flu shot, do this, polio vaccine, and we didn't question it.
Right.
Um, but there began to be a lot of skepticism. One thing was when the Tuskegee syphilis study, those results were revealed, and then there was a swine flu scare at one point. And then you also have this rise in alternative health, where people are selecting different options,
Right.
and other things that folks find out the government knew, like the Flint water crisis. So now we have this thing of there's informations on both sides, what's good and bad, and people sometimes don't know what to do, and sometimes they make the best decision they can for their children at the time. But we see, probably after COVID was the biggest turning point, because people felt they were misled. Just a lot of mixed messaging about mask and lockdowns, etc. So they're just making other decisions, and we really don't know the long-term consequences. I mean, we know what's going on with measles. It's something that spreads very quickly, and folks who choose not to get their child vaccinated, sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes those children are protected because everyone else is vaccinated. It's kind of
Right.
like COVID. The
Yeah.
mask doesn't help you, it helps you from spreading it to the other person, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I think one of the things he needs to focus on is to get um, health messaging and public engagement up. Like, he needs to rebuild trust, just like we need to rebuild trust him. He needs to rebuild trust with the community and just full transparency.
I totally agree, and that's why I enjoy that people are now sort of shifting to these podcasts where you can hear someone speak for an extended period of time rather than a news segment where you get 5 minutes of a sound bite, and then we got to go to commercial break. So you don't really
Right.
get to hear all the nuances of everything. So you would hear things like, "Hey, listen, in these measles impacted communities in Texas, a lot of it is like a Mennonite community or an Amish community where they
Right.
have certain religious beliefs and things like that. So, or they may have comorbidities and other contributing health factors that maybe was a reason that they passed due to measles instead of just, they were some perfectly healthy kid and they just died because of measles. It's not always the case. So yeah, hopefully, the thing I've heard about the MMR vaccine in particular, and I love that we're going down this route, and hopefully I'm not making you too
No, no,
nervous.
no, you're fine.
Okay, great. I've heard that if you could perhaps just do it where you have the measles vaccine, the mumps vaccine, and the rubella vaccine separate, and you extend it over a period of time with kids rather than just all at once when they're so young. Maybe that would be a way to go about it too, rather than just the 3-in-1 shot. Maybe you could sort of expose a child over time. It's things that I'm not nearly qualified enough to speak on, but when I hear things like that, they certainly make sense to me. Um, again, it's just things that over time, hopefully, we get more comfortable talking about, and people don't feel like when they're exposed to new information, they made a big mistake. Like personally, growing up, right, I drank probably a 12 pack of soda a week as a kid. Like I always had
Right.
soda in the house, and it's not until recently now that we're kind of diving into things like high fructose corn syrup and all the damage of sugar and things like that. So it's not that my mom was trying to kill me when I was younger when
It's
she would
just what
buy.
we did at the time with the
Yeah,
information we had. Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
And I think people, vaccination is a very personal choice, which I learned during COVID. Some people don't get vaccinated because they can't tolerate it because, again, they have another comorbidity that the vaccine could trigger.
yeah,
Some people it's religious. Some people it's just a personal choice. Um, but again, people make the best decision they can with the information they have,
yeah.
and uh, we rely on science. But how many times has there been a study that says, you know, tomatoes are good for you, and then all of a sudden tomatoes are bad for you? Just as an example, like the science changes as more research is done. So again,
Yeah.
I think people are just doing the best they can.
For me, I remember it was always eggs. Like 1 minute eggs were good for you, and then the next minute there was too much cholesterol and they're bad for you. So,
Right.
I think
Exactly.
maybe it depends on the price of them. I'm not sure. That might be a whole
Yeah.
marketing scheme.
Exactly, like, which is it? Are they good or are they bad?
Now, in your own home, what types of things, like when you go out shopping for recipes, when you're shopping for like hand soaps or things that you want to use on your body, perhaps, what are you looking for anything in particular when you're shopping personally?
I look for as less chemicals as possible. So I try to eat mostly whole foods when I can. Of course, do I eat fast food sometimes? Yes. Do I eat candy and other sugary things? Yes. But for the most part, I would say 85% of the time, I try to use whole foods and I try to use stuff like natural detergents and things like that that I know won't harm the environment or get into the stormwater system.
Actually, and this is kind of interesting. I've never really got a chance to ask this question, but when you hear something like, let's say, the case of Howard Johnson's, right? When you have particular powders and solutions that are you use that impact you and they give you cancer and things. I mean, is that something that you've become very much more aware of? Is that something you've always been aware of? Do you try to spread the information? Like when you hear things about that, what are your thoughts on those
Yeah.
type of things?
And I think, if a certain group of people have cancer or a disease and they all use this one product and they can link it chemically. Perfect example is when I was growing up, it was very common for girls to use talcum powder, Johnson's baby powder, talc, these kind of things, because it had some like powdery fragrance, right? Shower to shower or something like that. And now we find out you see these commercials. If you've ever used talc and you have cancer, call this number because we know differently now. So I don't think I was aware of those types of things until the rise of class action. But now we know things are more, the industry wants to make things bigger, better, faster, cheaper. So they're adding chemicals to things as preservatives. They're adding fragrance to make it sell. So we just have to be leery of that and just, kind of do a little bit of digging. I try to stay away from artificial dyes as much as I can.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So now when you go to these actually, I want to go back to, so when you walk into your office in the morning, what type of things dictate what you're going to focus on that day? Is it a particular like town hall meeting, or a particular maybe environmental issue that someone emailed you about? Like what type of things dictate that you work on from day to day?
So if it's just a normal quiet day, I spend my time doing research, um, maybe connecting with some of our nonprofit partners, and grant writing. I spend a lot of time grant writing, and catching up on like House bills and legislation that may impact our community.
Okay.
Now, we do have times where we get a citizen call, and that requires someone to go out and check whether they've seen someone dumping or they see a strange substance in the water. Um, that's not really my forte. Um, More than likely, if I get a citizen call, it is, um, you know, they want to know things about kids, like what can we do for kids. We have just recently started. Um, we've partnered with Richmond County Basics and providing kids with reading material on the river so they have a better idea of what the river is like. A lot of kids don't know anything about the river, even though it's right here and it's our drinking water. So
Yep.
I would say, for the most part, I keep pretty busy, but it is just the day to day work, connecting folks and educating is hard because these chemical conversations that we have about emissions and ppm and to the everyday person, it's a lot to take in if you're not up to date or scientific. So part of my job is to explain it in the easiest way possible that people can understand and make good decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I came across an article last year that kind of changed my life, because we had always just been, whenever the kids were hungry, the quick thing was just to go to Wendy's and get some chicken nuggets.
Right.
I read this article. I think Wendy's chicken nuggets may have the most plastic in them of any fast food out there. I couldn't believe it. So now that's totally changed our thing. We go to every time now we got to go to Chick-fil-A and get the grilled nuggets, which is fine. I don't mind that. That's just for a quick fix, and that's, I think that's just people's jam nowadays, just in general. I mean, every fast food, you see the line when it comes to dinner time, rush hour anywhere, and it's like, more people. And you as a chef probably noticed it as well. I mean, people just sit in line and wait more than ever for the fast food. And not that it's all bad, but boy, I don't think it's all great either. I know that guy from, didn't the guy from, do you remember that documentary, Super Size Me?
I do.
I think he passed away, didn't he?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure.
So, I
um,
mean, there's been,
Morgan something was his
okay.
name.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the thing about fast food and ultra processed foods, not only do they have preservatives in them, number one, to keep them fresh for longer, or
Yeah.
um, help them keep their shape while they're being held under a heat lamp, to get you sort of hooked on them or keep coming back to the drive through. There's a lot of flavor enhancers in there. And it could be anything from MSG to other chemicals to make it taste better, to give it a better, they might add xanthan gum to give it a better mouthfeel. They have all sorts of ways to enhance food. And I will just kind of tell you my own personal story. I am not a vegetarian, but I love vegetables and I like to eat. I try to be mindful about eating more vegetables and less meat.
Yeah.
And so I bought a chicken substitute product that was absolutely delicious. Like I just could not get over how good it was. And I said to somebody, it tastes better than chicken. And as soon as I said that, I thought, wait a minute, how can something fake or imitation taste better than the chicken itself? And I started looking into the ingredients and I stopped eating it because I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
But of course, with potato chips, they enhance them. So you really can't eat just one. You're going to finish off the whole bag and buy more. And now with the rise of Ozempic and Wegovy and other weight loss drugs, food scientists are working harder than ever to combat that.
I mean, the publicity for Ozempic has just been crazy. It feels like, I listen to so many comedy podcasts, and even in the comedy podcast world, it's like you can't not get through an episode without someone mentioning Ozempic. That's just been a real. And from what I understand too, like I think maybe just like with everything else, of course, I think moderation might be beneficial, but once you start depending on it, I've heard it can really be damaging to your gut. Yeah, what do you know any more about that perhaps?
I don't really. I know that it regulates your blood sugar, which helps, with hunger and weight loss. But I do know, like nothing scientific, but I do know of one person that took Ozempic and has horrific side effects. That their health is worse now because of
Okay.
Ozempic. And again, I don't know all the scientific details behind it, but it can have like an adverse effect.
Yeah, I thought I read something like gut paralysis, which doesn't sound very fun at all.
No, no,
And
no.
then you mentioned the potato chips. Speaking of RFK Jr. earlier, he just did his first interview as HHS secretary for CBS, I believe it was, and he was mentioning how he was in a recent conversation with the CEO of Pepsi, and they're over Doritos. And I guess the CEO of Pepsi was just like, "Hey, our customers like our Doritos red. I don't know what to tell you. We got to use this dye." And
Right.
that RFK is like, "Oh, if we could just cut it down on the dyes, because I guess the United States is." The only, if not one of the only countries, when it comes to like European and Canada to use all these different dyes and additives and things like that. So it's not so much we're asking you to ban Doritos. We just kind of want the most healthy ingredients possible. And I don't know that it's kind of it's a double edged sword because we talk about these health effects and we talk about these corporations when there is an element of consumer power. Like and it's such, and you get down to that, and that's a double edged sword too, because our money dictates what product's going to be out there, right? If everyone decided they wanted Mountain Dew and only bought Mountain Dew, that's all you would see on the shelves, and I understand that part of it. But also when there's inflation and you synthetically take the power of our dollar out out of our hands and our money no longer goes as far as it used to, well now we have to go to the dollar store and we have to buy these things that are less healthy for us. So
Yeah.
it's all a complicated game, of course.
You made a great point with what we buy and what we are exposed to. With the food industry in the United States, we have a case of the tail wagging the dog. The food industry heavily influences what we eat. It's not so much our culture and traditions anymore.
Right.
It is the food system creating these products and pushing them out. And I saw that as a recipe developer that people would complain to me like, oh, we're spending $500-600 on groceries a month. It's getting ridiculous. I can't. And I'm like, well, what are you cooking? And it's like, oh, well, Monday we have tacos and the next night we have sushi. So restaurant culture is influencing what we eat and how we cook at home.
Yeah.
And that really wreaks havoc on our health and our budget. Everybody wants that perfectly Instagrammable plate of food at home. But meals at home used to be very simple, roast chicken, some vegetables, mashed potatoes, and then you ate the maybe more expensive things when you went out to restaurants.
Right.
Um, just with what you were saying with the dyes, red number 3 has been banned because they linked it to hyperactivity in children. And even though it's been banned in food, it's still used in cosmetics. In a lot of countries, when with dyes, they're either outlawed or they have to have a warning label that this has been chemically or synthetically dyed. Um, but yeah,
Not so much.
there's some allergic reactions in kids, hyperactivity, and in some studies they said it causes cancer in like lab rats. So but it's just one of those things. It's not food is not nourishment anymore. It's a commodity, it's a business, and they want you to eat more of it. Whatever it is, just consume more of it.
And unfortunately, it seems like anyone who tries to talk about holistic foods like you were talking about earlier as maybe a form of medicine, like garlic is good for this, cinnamon's good for that.
Mhm.
As soon as you start talking that way, people think you're a kook and you're crazy. So
Right, but that's what generations ago did. They used things out of their yard, they used herbs. And most medicine is derived from herbs. It's just a synthetic form. Like aspirin, people used to eat tree bark or chew tree bark or make it into a tea for headaches. Well, aspirin is like the synthetic version of that. So I think the thing with herbal medicine is you have to know what you're doing, consult a professional, and you have to use more of it than you would like synthetic medication. 1 tablespoon of Robitussin is not going to be equal to, a cup of mullein tea. You probably need to drink a quart of it or something. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there are alternative remedies out there.
I will say, after having chewed, it was not an entire clove of garlic, but I did chew more garlic than I probably should have because I heard all this stuff. I
Mhm.
think I'm gonna switch to the pill form. I do after
Yeah,
having done
yeah,
that.
yeah. Some things we're just not used to.
Have you ever tried anything like that, like very holistic, that you were just like, "Ah, I think I'm gonna try the pill form next time"?
I am a big proponent of oils like that are like omega-3 fatty acids. Like
Okay.
most people take fish oil or these
Yeah.
salmon pills or whatever. I'm a fan of black seed oil, and I tried it in its form like a syrup. It's absolutely disgusting. So I did go to the pill form. Yeah, absolutely terrible. It's made from
Gosh, I came across
corn
one.
seeds.
Have you heard the one that have you heard the one about stone fruit seeds, like apricot seeds, being good for preventing cancer?
That sounds like a trip to the emergency room, but I have not heard that.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe, yeah. I think it was in like a ground up form, something because of between what apricot seeds and apple seeds, something about it. I forget what the element was, but yeah. Um, here's something that I came across recently I thought was interesting, particularly because of the price of eggs.
Hmm.
There was a time in this country when these flyers were put out. Uncle Sam expects you to keep hens and raise chickens. I came across this. It was back in 19. That's a World War I days. But yeah, just to think about where we are with eggs and chickens and what you're. I mean, gosh, you see, a new residential area pops up in your neighborhood, right? And it's just house after house next to each other, and there's no room for a garden. There's no room to have chickens and things like that. Are you able to have a garden in your area, and do you have one, or would you like to have one?
Absolutely. I am working on that now. It is completely allowed in my neighborhood, and that's something me and my neighbors are working on to kind of get moving, so that
Okay.
we have a source of food that we can, that's whole. Plus, gardening is good for exercise and just your mental well-being, being out in the
Yeah.
earth in the dirt.
Absolutely. So let's see here. Sorry, I'm just kind of pulling things up now. I'm back on your Facebook page, and I'm going to pull that up so we can look at it together. One of the most recent posts here was about the lead exposure in Augusta. Is that something you wanted to talk about real quick? It says here many homes in Augusta built before 1978 may still have lead paint, and even more have lead in the soil from nearby industrial activity. So, like, when something like that goes up, what kind of prompts that? Is that something you've been working on a lot at Healthy Communities Augusta, or is that just something that's just kind of gets brought to your attention?
No, so early on when I came on, that lead exposure and lead remediation was a big focus.
Okay.
And again, because the homes are older and the use of lead paint, and then also we did about 40 samples of dirt just from all around the city, particularly in places that children play. So there were a number of play yards that had the soil had high lead contaminants. Sometimes like 30 times the legal limit amount. So
Wow.
lead remediation can be simple, right? Um, People get scared to get tested for lead or have their home tested because the duty to fix it falls on the homeowner
Okay.
or whoever owns the property.
Gotcha.
And how lead comes to our attention mostly is in children. So, in children under the age of 5 or 6, I think it's 5, it might be 6, if they are exhibiting severe behavior problems, the first thing that happens in Richmond County is that they test them for lead. And if they go to any facility that takes Medicaid or Medicare, it's automatic, right? So that's the first thing. And then they try to find out. Department of Public Health has a great lead program. Amazing. Derek Buzzhart is over it. He would be a great person to talk to. But they can come in, they can test, and they can help you with the cost of remediation.
Okay.
City of Augusta also has a program. So if you find out, like sometimes it's as simple as there was one child who had high levels of lead, and they brought the counter into the home. They couldn't figure out what it was, and they got near a coffee table. Well, that coffee table they picked up at a flea market, and it had lead paint on it. And turns out the kid was chewing on the coffee table. Easy fix, get rid of the coffee table.
Yep.
In a play yard or a playground, you can spread a thick layer of mulch, because what happens is when kids are playing or swinging on a swing, they drag their feet, they kick up all that dust, and that's how they're ingesting the lead. So if you put down a thick layer of mulch or wood chips, that can remedy the situation and fix it.
Okay.
Here in East Augusta, we actually have a brand new playground set at the Eastview Community Center. One of the things they did is that it's on a concrete slab. So there is no risk of lead exposure for kids.
Nice. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I know back in my hometown in upstate New York, I think they have the highest lead exposure, like in water and the rest of the environment than the rest of New York. So that's something that's a little, yeah, hits close to home for me. And that's, like you said, it can impact you in so many ways, especially the behavioral impacts. And if you can just, again, like you said, just get rid of that one thing in your home that's causing the exposure, just to have that information, very important.
Yeah. And one of the things with Augusta, if there are levels of lead found, a lot of times it comes from the pipes because we have older pipes, and they're made from lead. And so lead gets in the water that way. If it's in the ground, when it rains, it goes into the storm drain, goes into Savannah River, gets clean. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of ways that lead gets into the system.
So you mentioned there the Department of Public Health. Do you have a pretty good relationship with the people over there?
We do. They're one of our strongest partners. The Department of Public Health led, and then also um, Reduce Your Risk, the breast cancer program. So this program gives free screenings to women over 40 that cannot afford the mammogram or the MRI or whatever you need. Like sometimes you have to go in and do a second test. So they provide the expense of that. Every a month, they're out with a bus, they're testing women, or they can go directly to the health department to catch the cancer. Because again, we have extremely high levels of cancer here in Augusta.
Have you? I don't want to get again,
Mhm.
and we're not live, so by all means, yeah, anything you
Oh,
want
no,
to.
you're fine.
Have you already been through any tests? Like, have you been curious yourself and gone to the
I
hospital?
have. I do not have any cancer, but again, because my grandmother had it, I'm hyper vigilant because it can run in the family depending on the type.
Yeah, I think both my grandfather. I know my father had. And actually, it's my grandfather, my mother's side, and my father had colon cancer of some sort. So I definitely got to keep my eyes in my lower section aware. You
Yes,
know what I
yes,
mean? So
definitely.
yeah. And they're saying, younger and younger, you ought to get checked out. And I'm not looking forward to that appointment, but
No, but it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary.
um, so that's great. Has there been any crossover between the two? Like, have you had people at the DPH work for you guys, or anyone at your department work over there, type stuff?
They are a part of Healthy Communities Augusta. They come, they bring information, and when there are the power of Healthy Communities is when there is any movement by a company, whether they want to come here, whether they want to expand a chemical or product line. We can do the research, see what that means for our community, and we can write a letter or sign a petition. And when you say, "Oh, well, we have Reduce Your Risk, we have AU Health, we have all these folks that signed off on it," it's something to be looked at. And I think honestly, that is the reason why we got a hearing, because what happened with um, Solvay or Science Co. They applied for the permit over the Christmas holiday break. We caught it, and the deadline was like to put in comments was January 3rd. So of course we put in comments, but one of the things we asked for was a public hearing because there was not a public hearing for this particular permit, and they granted it. So instead of just closing off the comments, they kept the comments open and we had a hearing.
Okay.
And again, we had several um, folks that commented. Healthy Communities Augusta, the Riverkeeper, some folks from some churches, and the research and the data was there, so they have to look at it very carefully.
It's funny that you say that too. I'm almost positive that that's how the Federal Reserve Act was passed over Christmas break as well, with all the
Yeah,
money. So
yeah. Sometimes, it's at a time when folks aren't paying attention, and you just have to stay vigilant. Sign up for the notifications and just stay on top of it.
now I have this section here of the page highlighted. Is there any particular challenges that Masters Week presents, like with maybe more litter or maybe more people visiting the river type stuff? Does that present more challenges than any other type of year
I
or
think
any
it's
other time of year, I should say?
more emissions and more litter and trash. So it's
Okay.
just being careful. Carpool when you can, ride share, etc. But also be cognizant of the trash and where you're putting it, because a lot of it ends up in the storm system.
And that's actually a really good transition point. This article made it to all the way to the BBC. This is how prominent the Masters is. And I don't, as someone who lived in New York most of my life, I mean, I have always heard of the Masters, but to really feel it down here, know how important it is.
Right.
So this is from the BBC Sports section just a few days ago on April 8th. Quote: "We need the Masters. Augusta's adversity after Hurricane Helene." This is by Jonathan Jurechko. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Jonathan. But here we have it. The manicured grass around the entrance to Augusta National is pristine. It always is. In the suburbs which circle the home of the Masters, though, it is a different picture. Fractured trees sprawl across gardens, rubbles of wood and bricks stack high. Homes remain shattered, so do lives. When Rory McIlroy and the world's, so I'm going to skip that part. In
Mm,
September, Hurricane Helene hit the southeastern states, leaving death and destruction in its wake. Augusta, nicknamed the Garden City because of its natural greenery, felt its mighty force. The residents are still dealing with the effects. I'm sorry, would you mind pronouncing this woman's name again for me?
but
Tanya
Tanya Bonatabatis.
Bonatabatis. Okay.
Mm,
There were multiple hours of 80-mile-per-hour winds, which laid all the forest down. Lifelong Augusta resident Tanya Bonatabatis told BBC Sport, "A lot of trees fell on top of houses and crushed cars. I lost my truck, but I was a lucky one." A little further down here, we have some numbers. According to the National Hurricane Center, Helene is responsible for at least 249 fatalities in the U.S., including at least 175 direct deaths. It was the deadliest hurricane since Katrina in 2005, which is just wild to think about.
right.
Augusta, which is the third most populous city in Georgia, was attacked by gusts of winds which reached 100 miles per hour throughout the night of 26 September with stark consequences. Helene's winds were responsible, quote, for killing 11 people, all from trees falling onto homes in the greater Augusta area. At least 362 homes and buildings were destroyed, while 3,000 others suffered major damage, and 3,500 others experienced minor to moderate damage. How did you and how did your home fare during the storm?
We lost all of our trees in the storm. Fortunately, they did not fall on our home, but we lost every single tree, which our power bill this summer is going to be sky high because those trees were planted in 1965. They were very large and they provided shade for the house.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, we suffered significant roof damage, and also ceiling damage. So yeah, we got hit pretty hard.
I've never seen. I mean, do you think it? And I'm not a master or an expert on like. Obviously, I'm not an arborist, a tree
Arthur,
person,
yeah.
but arborist. Okay, thank you. Was it just a combination of the ground being so soaked and maybe the roots kind of being that vulnerable to the wind pushing? I mean, it's just all these pine trees. I couldn't believe the damage of just completely uprooted trees.
And it was the force of the winds as well. I think Helene got up to 120 miles an hour. And that just, we're just not prepared for that. We don't, for example, my roof could sustain winds of 90 miles per hour, which when this roof was put on, that was perfectly fine because we didn't have hurricanes and tornadoes, right? Now, roofers and roofing companies are recommending that you get at least 120-mile-per-hour shingles because the weather is just going to keep coming. With Helene, it was the winds, but also we had several tornadoes during that time. And I think that's what took a lot of trees out. Like I remember distinctly 315, I just heard this big snap and boom, it sounded like a bomb went off and it was those two trees.
I mean, events like these are almost entirely changing the insurance industry. I think there are insurance companies that are pulling out of Florida entirely because they don't want to cover all the flood damage. I mean, does that
Right.
sound? Have you heard those type of stories?
I've heard those stories before. I've heard people once they get their home repaired, the insurance company dropping them. There's a lot of chatter. If you look in the Connect Augusta Facebook, everyone's asking, what is the best insurance company? Who pays the quickest?
Yeah,
Because people are having to fight their insurance company to get the things repaired that they need repaired.
I have seen that a lot. You're right. Just people looking for answer.
Yeah, like what can we do? And one thing that people don't know, um, there is a government employee called a public adjuster. And there's one here in Augusta. Sometimes insurance companies may have a relationship with them. But if even when you get your settlement, the public adjuster inspects your home, they go over all the documentation, your policy to make sure that you're getting uh, the money that you need. And in the case of me, for example, um, I didn't want 90-mile-an-hour shingles put back on the house. Um, so the public adjuster can plead your case for you.
Okay.
So that's a resource that people need to understand. But yes, there are public adjusters available to get folks the help they need. And some people have a terribly high deductible, particularly in larger homes. Some people opt to have a $6,000 deductible or a 20% deductible, and those folks are really struggling. And that may be where FEMA can come in and help. But I've heard mixed reviews. Some people are saying, it's a process, and you just have to be patient. And I think that's the case with this. I mean, we were all impacted in some way.
And I just hope people, understand it's not, you're not weak, you're not dumb, you're not ignorant if you just reach out, and if you need help, because not everyone's like my mother worked at State Farm and in the insurance
Mhm.
industry for most of, her adult career. So I can just, if ever I have a problem, I can just say, hey, mom, what do you think about this? But not
Right.
everyone has that luxury. And you start throwing out these, terms and percentages and things like that. And they're just like, listen, all I know is if I get in a car crash, my company's supposed to take care of me, but I don't know
Right.
anything beyond that. So I think it's really helpful to have you break that down, and I appreciate that, and just let people know there are options out there and different outlets. So yeah, this is a trying time. I mean, you need trees removed and your roof replaced, and even just down to your mailbox being replaced, and all these
Right.
things. It's insane the amount of work that needs to be done around here still. And it's crazy. Now I brought up that one last article about the Masters. I don't want to pick on them too much because I know they're a big source of revenue in the Augusta area and they do good things. But I did want your perspective on this as far as environmental impact. I came across this article from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it says ARS scientists explore ways to minimize runoff from golf courses. And this was in 2018. And it says down here, as Americans head for the links this year, golf course managers and superintendents know it's important not only to maintain the greens and fairways, but also to minimize the risk of pesticides and fertilizers flowing into nearby ponds, streams, or lakes. So, as one of the largest golf courses and one of the most popular golf courses in all of the world, is that anything that you're familiar with the Augusta National as far as like conflicts or things like that you maybe have been in touch with them about, or environmental impacts that they have?
I have not spoken to anyone from Augusta National directly.
Okay.
It is a beautiful golf course, and it's kind of a mixed story. Like it's almost a preserve in some kind of ways. Like there's a lot of green space, and there's a lot of tree canopy and mature trees. Right.
Yeah.
Um, they actually use a drainage and irrigation system that reduces runoff.
Okay.
And they have several ponds on the course that are used for irrigation recycling. They also do a little bit of land, preservation. Like that course will be there until the end of time. Some other things that are in order to keep like grass inside the masters is the color green like you've never seen before.
Never.
It's perfectly manicured, but in order to maintain that, you have to use chemicals.
Yes.
You have to use pesticides and you have to use fertilizer, so it's thick and rich. So that chemical runoff can go into Rays Creek, which runs through the course. And again, a lot of people take for granted that we live on the Savannah River, and I've even heard legislators say, "Oh, we have plenty of water." No, we don't. I mean, we have water, but we need to use it wisely. Golf courses in general take a lot of water. It's water intensive to keep it green. And while, like they do use effective irrigation, but they use millions and millions of gallons of water,
Right.
which can, can be a problem in years that we have a drought. And I want to go back to one thing you said. Um, Augusta needs the Masters. I think that's true in two ways. It's something that people look forward to every year. So it's sort in a way it's a morale booster. But we cannot deny the economic impact it has. A lot of restaurants and bars make enough money in these 2 weeks to survive the entire year. And
Yep.
it's not just the week of the Masters. You have the women's pro-am, the women come in. So it's about 6 weeks of activity. And before that, the press come in and people, staff come in. So we have the Augusta rule, which allows you to rent your house for 2 weeks out of the year and you don't have to pay tax on it. So that's one thing. It pumps a lot of money into the economy. But more importantly, which a lot of people don't know, is that the Masters Golf Tournament supports a number of charities through the Community Foundation.
Okay.
Um, they give very generously to organizations, and it's open to apply to any organization. They even have a program where if employees of Augusta National want to donate to you or your organization through a paycheck program, they can. So, yes, it is a lot of strain on the city as far as hospitality, as far as water resources, but they do make it a point to give back, especially since the people of Augusta have given so much to Augusta National. Some people have moved out of their homes or sold their businesses so that the master's property could be expanded for all the hospitality needs. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, you would prefer if the players didn't urinate in Race Creek like that one guy did this year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Don't do that, folks.
Do you enjoy golf yourself, or have you ever been to the course?
I have never been to the course. I've seen inside the gate several times. I'm a big person that loves flowers and landscaping. So I just marvel at the way the course looks. I've not been in, though. I've never been to a tournament.
It's funny, if you knew me, you would know I'm pretty anti-elitist, but there
Mm,
is something about the mystique and that it being such an exclusive place that you're just like, oh, I just want to see it
I
so
just wanna
bad.
see.
But I'm
Yeah,
glad not everyone's. I'm glad it's a thing. I love that it's a thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we have about probably 40,000 people, 50,000 people in town for the tournament, and even more, with journalists and staff and tech and etc. The trainers that come with the golfers, so it's a lot of folks, and it really does help out our community. And I think I wasn't sure if they were going to have the Masters with the devastation. They got the course cleaned up pretty well, but you can see even when you're driving down Walton Way, there are a number of trees still down. Um, but I think we couldn't do without it, to be honest.
Does healthy communities keep track of, like, say, and this might be more of a conservation wildlife thing, but do you keep tabs on, like, say, bird population or rodent population when something like that happens? Migration of squirrels and all that stuff.
No, I
Okay.
I don't. I don't keep
Okay.
track of that. Yeah.
I just,
No.
I just talked to Lenny Burt the last episode, so that was a pretty cool learning about all the local animal population. But yeah, I just wasn't curious. I was curious if maybe that was something that also was under you guys' purview here.
Now, one of the things we are concerned about is because of the loss of the tree canopy, the declining population of birds. Like we don't measure it, like we don't go out and count the birds and then count how many are left.
Yeah.
But even over in North Augusta, they were had a bird sanctuary designation or a tree sanctuary designation. Because of Helene, we've lost that. So, when you talk about lack of birds and you talk about lack of pollinators, and it's just a domino effect. So we are concerned about it and dedicated to rebuilding the tree canopy. One of the things that we'll be doing for Earth Day at Finnessy Swamp on April 19th,
Yeah.
Saturday, we will be giving away trees.
Oh, nice.
Yep, that
Okay.
people can pick up and plant.
What kind of trees are we giving away?
They are fir and spruce, I believe.
I love it. I love it. And those are the type of thing. I mean, I'm so again, excuse my ignorance, and those are the type of things that are pretty compatible and with natural to Georgia and all that.
Yes.
Okay.
And trees are expensive. I don't know if you've ever tried to buy a tree. I bought a medium-sized tree a few years back, and it was $99. It wasn't even 4 foot tall.
I mean, the clearance palm trees at Lowe's right now are $25.
Yeah, yeah. So you get it. Trees cost money. So, and a lot of people, if they're trying to repair their home or have been economically impacted by Helene, they don't have the extra money. So
Yeah.
hopefully folks come out and get some trees. We have plenty.
Now, this is going to be the part of the show, if you don't mind. I'm kind of just going to pick up a few different articles here and just kind of get what your thoughts are. I don't expect, you don't have to wax poetic on any of them, but just kind of
Yeah.
your thoughts and if you've been familiar with them before. This one here is from the WRDW team at 1226. It says, dozens sue Augusta plant alleging exposure to cancer-causing gas. And this one is from 2021, November 9th, from Sloan Ocone. That's a great name, Sloan
Yeah, it is
Ocone.
a great name.
Starts off here, ethylene oxide. It's something you've probably never heard of, but it's a toxic gas blamed on problems in our own backyard. Right now, 24 people are suing a sterilization plant near the Augusta Regional Airport and Finnessy Swamp, claiming it knowingly exposed them to gas, leading to cases of cancer. Ethylene oxide is mainly used to sterilize hospital equipment and make plastic, a $3.5 billion a year industry in the US. So I guess it's this company KPR. Are you familiar at all with them?
Kindle Patient Recovery, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So if you don't mind, I mean, what do you know about this? What's been your involvement? Go ahead
Yeah,
and just.
I'm not involved in this, and I don't know anything about it. But
Okay.
again, we tend to know, um, we tend to notice patterns, right? So if 20 people work at the same company and 20 of them have the exact same disease, what's the common factor?
Yeah.
But this case was dismissed. I do remember it being dismissed because they couldn't make the link between the health conditions, their health conditions, and emissions, and that's the hard part. That's where you need an Aaron Brockovich. You know.
Absolutely. Gotcha. Gotcha. I like that. Yeah, that's KPR. There was this other one here. Oh yeah, this is a big one actually. Huge facility down here in this area. People might know about it. SRS, the Savannah River site. This article is from actually it's from 10 years ago now, just about. So maybe things have changed, but I was surprised to see that they have this coal ash pit that doesn't have some sort of barrier that I guess these other companies use to keep the coal ash from the actual ground and sediment and dirt itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this one here from from Sammy Fretwell in 2015. Every time a dump truck tilted its bed skyward and coal ash slides to the ground at the Savannah River site, it adds to the height of a government landfill intended to seal off toxins that have sickened wildlife and poisoned water. But the effort to isolate coal waste from the environment at SRS is missing a key component that power companies are using to protect groundwater and creeks. The landfill does not have a synthetic liner beneath the ever-accumulating mound of coal ash. So is that something that you've been familiar with at all, the coal ash out there at SRS?
Yes, and the problem with it is that it can leak into the water table because there's not that lining. So they're just in the past, the riverkeeper has called for more stringent oversight because those are contaminants that can affect the water.
Yeah, I guess what the main thing out there is tritium, and I believe that's a very, very. I mean, if that gets out into the environment, from what I understand, it's super, super bad news. Just to
Right.
use my layman's terms. Okay, so yeah, that's something. I mean, that's from 10 years ago. So I should have done more digging around and see what the progress has been since then. But
Yeah, I
perhaps, if
can.
you don't mind, maybe we could do a follow-up episode sometime, you and I.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I love it. Let's see. I had one here for Vogel. That's another nuclear power plant out here
Mhm.
in the Augusta area. Let's see. Here we go. So this one is from 2018 on GeorgiaWatch.org. Health environmental harms ignored at Plant Vogel VCM 18 hearings. So we've got here. I wanted to get down to. So they listed the other nuclear catastrophes that have happened between Chernobyl and Fukushima. It says down here in Burke County, Georgia, environmental samples contain tritium, cesium 137, strontium 90, plutonium, iodine 129, cobalt 60, according to a recent report by Georgia WAND. Each of these radioactive isotopes, tritium is the element contributing to the highest levels of contamination, showing up in air, rain, groundwater, river water, drinking water, fish, milk, crops, leafy vegetation, and deer. All nuclear power plants routinely release doses of tritium, which can cause birth defects and cancer. So, what do you know about plant Vogel and tritium? Have you been involved with that at all?
It's funny. I actually did a piece for Grist on Plant Vogel, as it ties to the Public Service Commission, who determines what we pay for electricity. Um, I will tell you this: I interviewed four people that had ties to Plant Vogel. One person was somebody that went in and did radiation remediation, basically the day-to-day cleanup. Another person was from the department, had been in the army and dealt with communications. Another person had actually worked and helped design the plans for Plant Vogel. And then another one was a educator who was concerned about the cost of electricity. But everyone that had worked at Vogel will tell you it is 110% safe.
Okay.
That the precautions and the training that they have um, are just top notch, and they are monitored and tested for radiation all the time, right? And one person that actually cleans those rooms where there's the blue water said that I get less radiation at work um, than I would eating a banana. And I looked it up, and it's absolutely true. Um, so I think the problem with Plant Vogel, and this is just kind of speaking after I've talked to several people in the community, there are risks involved. The public doesn't understand those risks, and they are, more importantly, they are afraid that if something happens at Plant Vogel, as an individual, they don't know what to do. Like, are they
Right.
supposed to get in the bathroom? Are they supposed to drive off? Like, they don't know what to do, right? Are they supposed to drive to another county? They don't know what to do. So, day to day, folks getting exposed to radiation, they test them often. And radiation has a half life. So, if you've got too much radiation, maybe you take a couple weeks off until it goes down, right? But in the case of an accident, um, experts will tell you there is no safe level of radiation exposure.
Right.
So I think I'm no nuclear scientist, but I think the public needs a better understanding of what happens at the plant, what the risks are, and what to do in an emergency, because that was a thing I heard over and over and over again is I don't know what to do if there's an emergency. Like, people even ask me, is there a warning alarm like for tornadoes? So I think that's super important for the public to understand. And I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding Vogel. um, they've got the fourth tower up and running, and it's supposed to be, you think it makes more electricity is right here in Georgia, and electricity would go down. Well, the plant needs to be paid for. Um, but it's good. I think with Helene, it showed us that we need multiple sources of energy.
True.
Gas, coal, electric, nuclear generated power. Because once like the city was just frozen when we didn't have electricity, right? So I think that was one thing I learned in that article is the more sources of power, the better. But yes, there are environmental risks with nuclear, but people that work there will um, just swear that they feel perfectly safe and protected.
I did. My brother-in-law used to work out there, and he would say the same type of things, and that always made me
Yeah.
feel good. I
Yeah,
did
and they
read.
did because I was like worried and I wasn't sure what my stance on nuclear was. But after talking to somebody that helped build and design the plant and somebody that works there during spills and has traveled around the country working in nuclear plants. They were like the safeguards. Like if an accident happened at Vogel, there are so many safeguards in place to shut it down that it would never get out of the plant. Like it would be more of an internal problem than an external problem. But again, the public doesn't understand that.
And that's good to know, especially when you have a big storm like we had. I mean, I'm sure people were
Mhm.
concerned, what kind, I know I was, if was there a leak, was there any type of damage that could affect, impacting, surrounding areas. So yeah,
Right.
I'm sure people are pretty reassured and feel good about you saying that. I truly appreciate it. Now, when it comes back to SRS, I should have brought up the article because I did read an article that was a little less than flattering about the way they used to store things back in the day. I saw video of, I think it was cardboard boxes filled with radioactive waste just being buried in the ground. So of course, that was back when the standards and the regulations weren't as they were. And again, you're never going to find someone who wants small government more than me, but that's where I truly get on the side of government when it comes to safety regulations and things like that. Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, and I love this, by the way. If you wouldn't mind, we could have another conversation sometime soon and talk
Sure.
about different things, and I think that'd be great.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm kind
absolutely.
of just hopping all around here at this point. I had another. I think that was it on SRS. Oh no, the SRS thing. If you know anybody actually, or if anyone is listening to this right now, and you know anyone who was impacted by when SRS first started, in the New Ellington days, and when they, I believe the documentary was called "The Displaced," that was made about that
Mhm.
time when some of the residents were moved out of there. So if you know anyone, or if anyone listening to this knows anyone impacted by that, I would love to do kind of like a revisit of Displaced and maybe like a follow up on that. I think that'd
Yeah,
be a lot of
um,
really
you can
interesting.
take a tour of Ellington and Dunbarton or Dunbarton, I believe, through the SRS website. They have public tours every year, and they're going on now. That was one thing that I wanted to do was to see because it never dawned on me. New Ellington. Well, what does that mean? I never thought like, oh, there's an old Ellington or that people were displaced and relocated.
Yeah, and when you read that sign, I don't know if you read that sign that they posted back in the day, the townspeople.
No.
There's the sign. It reads something like, "We love our town and we hate to do this, but we understand, for the good of our government. We hate the idea that our town's being destroyed so that another town can be destroyed by these weapons." But
Mhm.
we're I just it was very, I just hit you right in the heartstrings.
Yeah.
So yeah. And one of my favorite fun facts about SRS is because I'm from a place that has close ties to the Wizard of Oz. I guess two brothers that were Munchkins in the Wizard of Oz movie came down here to work on some of the pipes at SRS because they were small enough to fit in there.
Oh wow. Who
I always
knew?
like that fun fact. Are you familiar at all with the factory in the middle of town that emits such a pleasant odor all over the place? The FPL, beef processing.
Yes. It is the source of a lot of the things you smell, particularly late at night when they release more emissions.
Is that anything that people are going to town meetings about? And because I noticed here in this article, it actually says they're planning expansion to reduce the odor emissions. So clearly they're aware of it. So I mean, is that anything that that you've been involved in these conversations?
No, not for FPL. Like we know they emit, air pollution, and it's a smell, but it's also a source of revenue, and that's where cities, not just Augusta, but cities, get caught in the catch-22. Like we need industry, we need jobs, but they cause all these problems, and that's where regulation comes in.
Yes. So this article here, written by Damon Klein in 2020. Jim Rogers, president of the privately held company, said the total expansion represents a capital investment of between 110 120 million. The company has acquired roughly 45 additional acres north of the existing plant to be used for employee parking and the company's rendering operation. So
Mhm.
time will tell. Purebred cattle. Okay. I just know right now I work on Gordon Highway, and like you said, there are certain times of the week
Smells
and
terrible.
certain times of the day it smells awful, just absolutely terrible. And
I
I'm someone
agree.
who eats beef. I'm not trying to say, I don't want beef available, but I just, particularly when I'm driving by the trucks that have I grew up, my uncle was a farmer, so I saw that side of it to where, you raise them, you feed them, you take care of them. And I know eventually they're going to be eaten. But if I can disconnect myself from that part of it, I don't mind petting them, and I'll eat the hamburger, but I want out of everything in between.
Right. Right.
So that's just a nice little compartmentalization I get to do as an American, I guess.
Yeah, and you have to think about, I don't know what year FPL was created, but at that time, like that was kind of the edge of town. Like you had downtown, the downtown was the city, and then that was kind of like the edge of town. So everything that's grown up around that and the increased production just exposes us to that smell.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, touching on that too, are you familiar with the Hyde Park area at all over by Morgan Advanced Materials?
Yes.
See, this is something I've been very curious about. I drive, like I said, I work off of Gordon Highway, so I drive by this area quite a bit. And for people who don't know, this is the area that's off of Dan Bowles Road and Doug Bernard Parkway on your way out to the airport. And here's, Gordon Highway's right here, and you have Morgan Advanced, and then there's the, I believe it's Georgia Carolina Steel Companies right about
Yeah.
here, yeah, right there. And then there's just this whole area that you can tell used to be a neighborhood because there's homes and other empty places. And I just had no idea of the history of it. I asked Mr. Burt last time; he wasn't too sure. So then I go onto Google and I see here until ninth from Rob C. And again, maybe Rob C. Doesn't have everything right here, but I just want to read what he says. Until 1970, Hyde Park residents did not have running water or proper sewage. For many years, they pumped water from wells in their backyards and grew their own vegetables. In the mid-1980s, residents found out that a local wood preserving factory, Southern Wood Piedmont, had for years been leaking creosote into the ground. The EPA closed SWP, but the damage had already been done. People in Hyde Park and other surrounding areas have cancer, skin diseases, and other serious problems related to chemical exposure. Because SWP was located across the street from an elementary school, children in Hyde Park have a high rate of learning disabilities, asthma, and allergies. Over the past 10 years, numerous studies have been conducted which have not only found chemicals emitted by SWP in Hyde Park soil, but which also link the diseases found in Hyde Park to those chemicals. To make matters worse, Hyde Park is surrounded by 7 other factories and toxic waste sites.
Yeah. And there are former residents of Hyde Park that would love to talk to you about this.
I'd
They
love to
are
talk to them.
Yeah, they are older, but they are writing a book, in the process of writing a book about what happened. One of the things they will tell you is that the emotional toll and anxiety around leaving their community that was there since the 1940s has had a severe impact on them. And also, people don't feel that they were fairly compensated. Some people don't feel they were fairly compensated for having to move.
And
And
that
I
happened.
honestly don't know, like, I currently live in my grandmother's house, and if somebody came to me and told me I had to move, like, there would be no amount of money that could fix that. Like, I grew up in this neighborhood, so
Yeah.
I can definitely understand.
Yeah, so if anyone is, again, like Miss Cassandra said, if you're familiar with Hyde Park, if you grew up there, new people that grew up there, please go ahead and reach out. DM Busby925 @gmail. I'll give that email again at the end, and I'll have it in the show notes. But yeah, I just was very interested. Like I said, I drive by that area all the time, and it seems like you see the trees and you see the wildlife, and you're like, wow, it's kind of nice that nature's taking over. But there's a history to that. It's not just as simple as animals live there now. People used to live there, and even for the animals that live there now, is it safe? Is there still that like toxic exposure? So
Yeah,
just more of a thing.
one of the most beautiful areas in Augusta is off of Lovers Lane or Columbia Nitrogen Road. So you drive and you see all these factories and plants. There's a Starbucks plant back there that makes all the cake pops and things, and all these companies, and you see all this smoke, but you keep driving and you see an area that looks like a swamp and the most beautiful wooded, peaceful area. There are alligators back there, deer, etc. Um, and it's gorgeous. So you can have these two things where you have this industrial factories and pollution, but then you have this beautiful nature preserve right beside it, and that's what we want to preserve.
I totally agree. I thought I heard when I first moved down here, I was listening to the radio. I thought I'd heard Austin Rhodes mention something how Lover's Lane was going to be the site where they were going to grow medical marijuana. Does that sound familiar at all to you?
I am not familiar with that. I would
Okay.
be curious, but yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Now, what about the site that's right on the river? I don't know if you've ever crossed over 520 going from Augusta to North Augusta, and you got Augusta Concrete right there on the side of the road.
Hmm.
From what I understand from this article, I guess I didn't know before this, but I guess the concrete industry is pretty bad when it comes to environmental pollution and mercury and other elements like that. Is that something you've been familiar with in discussions with the concrete industry?
No, and even
Okay.
though we work on both sides of the river, I don't know about concrete.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I was just curious because I know that big company's
Yeah.
right there, and always the factory. I know I like the way an old factory looks. Don't get me wrong. I think the aesthetics of an old factory is pretty cool, but it's just what is it doing to the environment around you? Um, this was a story I saw a while ago that I'm not sure if you've seen before. Apparently, back in the day at Fort Gordon during the Vietnam era, they were training and they were exposed to Agent Orange. A lot of soldiers without even knowing about it because they were trying to simulate the environmental factors out
Mhm.
there. So, is that something that you've ever heard of or been familiar with?
I know that there are a number of chemicals um, that are emitted through Fort Gordon. I wasn't familiar with the Agent Orange, but there is they emit a lot of PFAS because of um, the fire retardant uniforms and the chemicals they use.
Okay.
So yeah, but I know that there are a lot of health concerns with people who are Fort Gordon, Eisenhower, but I didn't know about the Agent Orange.
I just want to give a quick shout out to the team at the I team there at 12 and 26 because the more stories I look up, it seems like they're the ones that are breaking it. So I just want to give a shout out to that team over there. They seem to be on top of it, and I really appreciate the local
Absolutely.
news coverage. When it's more than just everyone loves to hear about the festival that's happening and the unveiling of this and that, but when you can
Mhm.
really like muckrake as a local news investigator, that's the stuff that I really enjoy
Right.
personally. Not that I like that there's issues out there, but when you can actually get to the bottom of things, I think that's great.
Exactly.
So yeah, this was just a map of the environmental areas that were impacted by the toxins back in 67 to 69.
Mm.
Let's see here. Back then, Fort Gordon was known as Camp Crockett. Well, yeah. So if anyone's just more curious about that, check out the WRDW article on that. The Agent Orange that was sprayed over people at Fort Gordon. And then, Miss Cassandra, thank you so much. You've been, super generous with your time. I really appreciate this conversation. I think there was maybe one or two more tabs I just wanted to bring up with you,
Okay.
and then I'll totally just let you enjoy the rest of your weekend because it's a beautiful day out there
It
today.
is great. It is a great day.
Let's see. Oh yeah, this was okay. So this was the big one. This was the last one. That's why I saved it for last. If you are driving on 520 in the Augusta CSRA area and you get off at North Augusta and you go on Bobby Jones, you take that whole trip and you cannot help but notice this big factory on the river and big smokestacks coming out of each point. So this is from the Augusta Chronicle back in 2022. It says Augusta manufacturer, largest source of CO2 in Georgia, emissions tracker reports, and this is the Nutrien
Nutrient.
factory. Yes. So what can you tell me about Nutrien?
I know they have a lot of emissions, but I don't know a lot about nutrient. That was a focus of some work of the Savannah Riverkeeper before I came on board, but I know they are a big emitter.
Okay. Yeah, it
Yeah.
says right here we've got this from always love to give credit when credit's due. Abraham Kenmore of the Augusta Chronicle. The factory with the highest greenhouse gas emission in Georgia is in Augusta. More than any other manufacturing facility, Nutrient Augusta Nitrogen, a fertilizer manufacturer in East Augusta, is responsible for 1 in every 50 tons of greenhouse gases emitted in the state, or 1.73 million metric tons annually. This, according to a new tracker, let's see, what was I seeing here? Industrial emissions. The factory employs about 393 people and produces 500,000 metric tons of product annually. None of the other facilities on the tracker in the Augusta area come close to Nutrien's 1.73 million metric tons. You've got a few other facilities listed there. Deansbridge landfill, Baker Place landfill, graphic packaging, which I believe just last year is now Clearwater Paper. I think they
I
just
think so.
changed companies. That sound right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't
Yeah,
crazy. I
no,
didn't
that
read
sounds
something in
right.
my dreams or something like that. um, here we go. I wanted to get to what the company's what the president and spokesperson was saying. Here we go. Adams wrote that Nutrien is committed to dropping greenhouse gas emissions by 30% per ton based on a 2018 guideline. The company estimates the goal will require 500 million to 700 million in capital investment by 2030. So there you go. Just one of the big emitters there. I just want to touch on that real quick. And because again, it's like I was talking with Mr. Burt last time, I don't necessarily want to come across as, okay, here's a corporation, they're making money, therefore
Right.
they're evil. And that's too simple. So obviously it's just, that's why people like you are so important to say, hey, I'm glad you're making money, but here's a few, maybe a few rules and regulations we could possibly follow along the way. And I'm going to talk to my friends over here at the DPH and we'll see what we can figure
Yeah.
out to get you guys in compliance, right?
Right. We're not against industry or new business. Sometimes people think that, and that's not the case. Like, we welcome it, but we don't. We want people to come in here and leave the environment better than they found it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like, I live by Nutrien, and I see those white billowing clouds of smoke every day, every day, every day. So, yeah, and it impacts our quality of life.
Yes. Yes. So just so again, I'd love to get out of here on a positive note. You said you grew up in Augusta. You've lived here a long time. What are some of your favorite places, things to do? Like, say you want to go on a hike, or it's a nice sunny day like this. What would you love to do otherwise if you weren't talking to a goofball like me?
No, I love Finnissy Swamp. I love to go around the Greenway in North Augusta.
Yep.
Um, Rays Creek is always nice. So yeah, there we have a lot of beautiful outdoor spaces. Back before it was destroyed, Savannah Rapids.
Yes.
Mhm.
Have you been kayaking on the canal?
I have not yet.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot of fun. You just got to make sure when I was on there, the seaweed kind of moves back and forth, and it looks like an alligator, but it's not an alligator. So
Oh, that's good to know. That's good to know.
just keep that in mind. So thank you so much again. If people want to get a hold of either you or maybe they want to um, figure out how to become a part of Healthy Community Augusta or the Savannah Riverkeeper organization, how can they do that?
They can reach out through the website, which is savannahriverkeeper.org. They can email me, Cassandra at savannahriverkeeper.org. You can always call the office. So
Okay. Excellent, excellent. And again, you've been so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. I'd love to talk with you again soon sometime if you wouldn't mind that. So that'd be
sounds
awesome.
good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Loftlin. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording here, and we can
Okay.
just chat for a second, and then we'll be on our merry way. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time. Enjoy.